Hi, this is Ohfor. Let's make some projectile spells. So, projectile spells, what are those? Well, projectile spells, I know I'm going to sound like a repeat of myself, but projectile spells are like target spells, except they also have a projectile, surprise, before they arrive at their target. And as we recall, a target spell is in reality just a short spell, but located someplace else. So that makes sense, yeah? Now, so projectile spells, I mean, what do we have? We have here Shadowheart. Hello, Shadowheart. She has, out of the gate, a couple of projectile spells, or at least one. Firebolt. And we can see that it acts and behaves, at this stage, acts and behaves very much like a target spell. But of course, when we fire it, she launches a projectile at the target. And that's the only real difference. If we take something like Sacred Flame, we'll see that this is a pure target spell. There's no projectile involved. She basically, well, we don't have a target right now, but she's able to select a target and then fire Sacred Flame at them and dealing 1d8 radiant damage. If you have a bow equipped, so Shadowheart doesn't come with a bow, I think. No, she doesn't. But if you have a bow equipped, you get some ranged attacks here as well. And if you fire an arrow, this should not surprise, that's a projectile as well. And then we have all the special arrows. They are in reality just variations of projectile spells that then do additional effects, like dealing fire damage in a small area, dealing acid damage, or silencing the target, or whatever. And in reality, you could say that a silencing arrow, for instance, is really just a silence spell attached onto a projectile. And we'll see some examples of that. So enough about me blabbering here. Let's just go in and take a look. So what I normally like to do is I open up Shared, so the oldest project in the book, where all the basic stuff will be usually, and then Spell Data and Projectile. Let's see what's in here. So we get Dipped in Fire, Dipped in Poison, Sneak Attack. So all of these are the ranged versions of these sort of spells. So Disarming Attack, ranged. I'm pretty sure it's the ranged ones. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense that they would be projectiles. Ensnaring Strike, Pin Down, etc. Ricochet. So this is the arrow of multiple targets, I think it's called. And we'll take a look at that in a little bit on how that works. If we go further down the list, hamstring shot, piercing shot, head crack. I don't even know what that is. It sounds nasty though. And then we have the acid arrow and the chromatic orb. Guiding Bolt, Firebolt. So Firebolt is the one we'll probably be focusing on today. Magic Missile. So we did cover that a little bit in the episode I did about VFX, custom VFX for spells. So I don't think we'll be revisiting that this time around. Now, a little bit more surprising maybe, Jump is a projectile spell, where you are the projectile. Fly, same kind of thing. Then we have Ray of Frost, Scorching Ray. Now, I don't actually know. Eldritch Blast should be in here, but maybe it's part of one of the other projects and wasn't part of the first early access project. What else do we have? Glyph of Warding, Trap. So this is interesting. Glyph of Warding, like what? That's not a projectile spell. Well, it is and it isn't. So Glyph of Warding is a target spell. So you put a ward on the ground, and then when an enemy steps into it, it blows up in their face, which is all fine. So there is a target version of Glyph of Warding, and what that spell does is essentially it summons an invisible kind of entity that it puts on the ground, and then that entity will have an area, and then when somebody steps into that area, it will fire a projectile at them, which is what this is, right? So an acid glyph of warding will throw this spell in the face of anyone who enters this area of effect. I could probably do a video entirely on glyph of warding because it's quite an intricate setup. So for now, I'm just going to leave it. Drop a comment below if you're really interested, and we can do a deep dive on it. Okay, and here we have all the different arrow types: arrow of detonation, arrow of smoke powder, arrow of fire, and we'll see that these are all individual projectile spells, and where they differ is, well, it's actually not even here. Let's see if we can find somewhere. There we go. So arrow of fire, it does the main range weapon damage, right? And then on top of that, it does 2d4 fire damage. And that's really all it is. There's probably a little bit of an area of effect as well, if I remember correctly. We can probably find that. Yeah, explode radius, right? And then let's see. No, that's essentially it. So it's going to explode and deal the damage that we already saw in a 2-meter radius. And then arrow of smoke powder, 5-meter radius, arrow of fire burning. So this is when you've been put on fire by the arrow of fire. What else do we have? Arrow of darkness, acid, lightning, piercing, etc., etc. So we have all these different arrows. And then we're coming down further the list, we have all the throwables. So you can throw various poisons and oils and fire. So alchemy. So what's it called again? Well, there's a fire kind of potion you can throw at people. Alchemist fire. Fireworks, apparently. Holy water. Rotten food explosion. Interesting. Caustic bulb, spike bulb, vacuum bulb, etc. And then even further down the list, we have all the potions. So pretty much any potion you pick up, a healing potion, for instance, can be thrown, and then that acts as a projectile spell. So we have, so it says potion destroy healing. So this is basically, you take the potion, you throw it at somewhere, it hits the ground, it gets destroyed, and then this is the effect. So what a potion of healing does, in case anybody's interested, is it will, let's see if we can find that, and as usual I can't find anything. There we go. So it creates a surface on the ground of 1 in diameter, and then it has a status called potion healing cloud. So basically the potion healing cloud has the same effect as a small healing potion would have. Then you have greater, superior, and supreme. And they all do the same thing, except the healing effect is more and more effective. And then we have all the monsters that can do all kinds of stuff that I'll just basically skip, and all kinds of traps, and these are all in the game. So like for instance, if you have a chest that's trapped, it will have sometimes a fireball trap, and there's an easy and hard version of fireball traps. And again, why are these projectiles? Well, they're projectiles because, again, behind the trap itself, even if invisible, will be somewhere, and then it will fire this projectile at you. So it's just the way the game has it set up, and that's fine. We just deal with that. And then some AI helpers and other stuff. Okay, so why don't we start by finding Firebolt again, and creating our own version, because then we can really mess about with it the way we want to. So I've copied Firebolt, and then we go to spell data, projectile, and then we do to Firebolt. 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 = 2 + 1 inherited from Firebolt. Okay, so now we have our own Firebolt, and as usual I'm going to take the, oh actually it doesn't have a cost because it's a cantrip, so maybe we're fine with that. I'll just double check that. Yeah, it costs an action point, so we can cast it as many times as we want. That's good, makes our testing easy. And then we just need to find the name. So now we have tutorial Firebolt. Let's save that. And you can see, why do I do that? Shadowheart already has one. Well, we'll be modifying various things for it, so we are going to need that. So we go back in game. Hello Shadowheart, and then we add debug spell, projectile to Firebolt. Boom. And here we have it. And it will of course work exactly as the original, because we haven't done anything to it, we've just changed the name. Okay, so let's see what we can do with this. Now the first thing, when I was thinking about what to sort of do for this video, is I would very much like to make a version of Firebolt that can actually act a little bit like the arrow of multiple targets. So the idea being you hit a target with a Firebolt and then it spreads out to targets nearby, right? So why don't we try and do that? So let's see if we can find it over here. It was ricochet something. Let's just see if there is a specific one. So we did have all the different arrow types. So destination, smoke, powder, fire, lightning, piercing, ricochet, arrow, ricochet, arrow many targets, arrow of many targets, deal additional damage to 3 other targets in range. Let's take a look at how that's implemented. So we go looking here. So here's the tooltip damage. There's some prepare sounds, cast sounds. That's all fine. We don't care about that. Cycle conditions, use cost. We don't care. Animations, we don't care. We're gonna keep it a Firebolt, right? So we're not gonna mess with the animations of Firebolt or anything like that. Required weapon. So this is an interesting one that I don't think we've covered in any of the other spell types, but obviously, so when it says required weapon ammunition, what it means is it requires a weapon that uses ammunition, and that would be bows and crossbows. That's all that is, really. Hit animation type, hit effect. So that's an effect when you can hit by it. We could actually probably take that. So that means when you get hit. No, we'll just leave that. And that's it really, which is not at all what I expected. So let's see what I missed. Okay, so after a little bit of digging, the reason I was confused, let me just address that, is because I saw up here at the top something, and that made me make an assumption, and that is a terrible thing to do. So here we have the ricochet main attack, and if we go out here on the right, we see here fork chance, max fork count, fork levels, fork conditions. So I figured, oh, okay, fork chance 100% that it will do this, and then it will fork up to 1 extra target, fork, or at least something like that, fork levels and fork conditions. So I figured, no, this is going to be easy. It's not quite that simple with the arrow of many targets, but why don't we just try and do this in our own spell and then see what happens, because then we learn something. So we find fork chance on ours 100, 1, 2, and enemy. Alright, so now we have basically copied what's going on here, and put it into our own firebolt. I just want to see what happens. And then we'll look into exactly why arrow ricochet is different. But let's just see that. Oh, it's going to need a radius to act on because it doesn't have that. And so, which is set. So you can see here it has a, right? So it has a distance of 9. We just need to figure out where's that 9 defined. There we go, area radius, fine. So we'll go find that here, and we'll set it to 9 meters as well. Okay, so now our firebolt has basically piggybacked onto that behavior, and let's see how that works. So we save it, and then we go in game, and we are going to need some targets. Now Shadowheart, as you recall, has a problem with wolves, so that might actually complicate our things a little bit. So she has this fear of wolves passive. Guess we may have to find someone other than Shadowheart to do this, because spawning in enemies is not fantastic. Okay, so now we have 3 wolves. Tutorial firebolt, fire that. Oh, look at that. So the other wolf here got hit as well. So our ricochet, or fork, as it were, is working. So it only works on 1 additional target. But that is because we told it to. Out here, right? So only fork once, and then 2. So 2 levels is not entirely clear. But anyway, let's increase this. So now you can fork 3 times, and we'll save that. It's a little bit overpowered, but I think we've covered this. In this series, we do overpowered very well. Now the big question is, yeah. So now these are okay. Fantastic, Shadowheart. So she actually managed to miss. She won't survive this round, but we can heal her. See, and now you get into one of these deadlock situations where it's just a mess, because we can heal her and she gets up and she gets pummeled again. So this is where I reload. I mean, we could level her up a bit and whatever. That's all fine. I, however, just want to see one more time the ricochet working. So we fire. Yeah. So it does fire the spell. We saw a miss here. Actually, we can probably see that in the combat log. Yeah, so she missed on 2 of them. Why don't we make life a little bit easier for ourselves and make this firebolt behave very much like magic missile, which basically means oh, come on, that we don't want a spell roll, but now because it's inherited, so we're just going to do that. We put in a semicolon. Okay, so now I've copied all the fields up. Oh, so I claimed. No, obviously I forgot the ones in the beginning. That's fine. Quickly do that. Right. So now we have a copy of the firebolt spell, and we can get rid of this. And for the spell roll, I simply have nothing. So now we should have a spell that always succeeds. back in game. And then, yeah. So now 100% this will always go our way. And there we go. So now we're dealing out firebolt damage to multiple targets. There we go. Okay, so this is forking, and it sort of works. It does what we want it to, and let's just heal up Shadowheart. Unfortunately, that also means I heal up this wolf, but that should be easy. Now we have a very good firebolt. The difference being, so arrow of multiple targets does the same thing, however, it achieves it by spawning multiple projectiles, right? So we only see one firebolt getting shot here, and if that's all we're after and we want that multiple effect, well, then what we've done so far is simply good enough. But we can, of course, do what arrow of multiple targets does. I, however, don't think it necessarily makes sense to set it up here. But I will just show what's actually going on. So we go back to arrow of ricochet. So what it does is that when it deals damage here, we also see that it spawns extra projectiles. So it spawns a new projectile from its target. So you fire the arrow at a target, and then from that target, you will spawn an additional arrow that then fires onto the next target, and so on and so forth. So the way this is set up is that it spawns the new arrow, projectiles, arrow, ricochet, and then ricochet. So that's this one here. And funnily enough, what this one does is it again spawns an extra projectile, _2, which is this one. And now you're probably getting the idea. This one spawns ricochet 3, this one, and the last one acts as just a regular arrow. So you could keep going by just basically adding more and more of these, and then you would hit more and more targets. So the reason there's 3 of them is no doubt because this spell will hit 3 additional targets. Let's see if we can find the description. Yeah, so deal an additional half damage to the 3 other targets in range. Let's see if that is true. That should mean that this one here does half damage. And it does. So deal damage, main range weapon, divided by 2. Okay? And that's going to be the case for the next and the next. So that's essentially the only difference. And to set it up, we would basically need to just create more versions of our firebolt, and then basically follow the same pattern here. So that's why this is what confused me, because I was expecting arrow ricochet to use the fork conditions, etc., like I knew existed, but they do it in a different way. So they do it by actually creating multiple projectiles, and it probably could look cool. And okay, fine. You've convinced me. Let's try and do that. So it can't be that hard, right? Because we just do firebolt 2, and we inherit our own firebolt, and then we do firebolt 3, and inherit firebolt 2. So now we have the basics in place. Now we just basically need to figure out how to spawn additional projectiles, but we just learned that. So we're going to go here, and then we are going to find the deal damage. So we'll notice both on spell success and spell fail it will spawn extra projectiles, but our spell cannot fail. But but that doesn't mean we can't just steal this. So deal damage, D10 cantrip, fire magical, and then spawn extra projectiles, and that is going to be projectile underscore toot fire bolt 2. Okay, and then in firebolt 2 it's going to be toot firebolt 3, and in firebolt 3 we're not spawning any extra projectiles. Let's see if this is actually enough. It might be. We're not going to do anything with, we're not going to do the whole half damage nonsense. We don't, that's not how we roll. So just on its own, let's do it like this. Oh, and if we do this, then we are going to have to take the radius out, because that no longer makes sense. Now the extra projectiles is taking care of it. And then we also need to get rid of the fork chance, because none of that makes sense. Because now we're firing additional projectiles, so we don't need to rely on the internal forking. So I might get punished now for improvising, going off script. Not that I have a script, but let's just pretend. So this might not go to plan, but let's see. Let's get a couple of wolves in here, and then we do firebolt. Okay, I would probably need to slow motion to really see this. Let's see if Shadowheart can survive this onslaught. No, she cannot. So we reload. There's a fix for that, actually. So let's take our firebolt and then deal damage. You know what? 10d6 fire. Very balanced, right? And then level map value 10d6 fire. So now we can be fairly sure that these wolves won't stand up after the first round, and we makes our testing a little bit easier. Now I would love to see some distance between the wolves so we could really see what's going on. But it's a little bit difficult in the toolkit. We can maybe do an episode on that. On how to set up the stage better. But now we have a very, very powerful firebolt, does 10 to 60 damage. At least I made the tooltip. Yeah, I did it again. I do this so often. So I changed the tooltip, but I didn't change the actual damage. So that doesn't really help us. So there we go. And now, of course, I'm going to have to change it for the additional projectiles. So there we go, we saved that. And now, don't worry, Shadowheart. I'll just reload. Yeah, she's still in her afraid of wolves condition. I can't blame her for being afraid when 3 wolves spawn in. Okay, so once again, there we go. Problem taken care of. So that's another way of spawning multiple projectiles, which is quite cool. If there was more of a distance between them, you know, we could see it, but I can definitely see a difference in the impact from before, because when we did the fork thing, they all happened instantaneously, and here we do see a slight delay between the hits. At least I feel I can see that. And there, of course, if you were doing this for real, it makes sense that, well, I don't know if we can talk about making sense in this kind of context. But it makes sense that maybe Fireball 2 and 3 were doing less damage or whatever. They had a different range. I don't know. You do you, right? You just basically set it up any way you like. So that's the basics of projectiles and multiple spawning projectiles. I mean, a lot of this is, everything else we see is just basically what we've seen already in in shout spells and target spells. There's just a little thing with the actual projectile that is different. Now the last thing that would be of interest would be so out here we see the trajectories for the spell. Now I've already covered some of this in my video that is about VFX for a spell, because the trajectory is a combination of what you see when the missile is in flight and when it hits the ground and when it hits the target and so on, and also the path it takes. So I won't really be going into detail. So the VFX aspect of it I've already covered. The trajectory aspect of it, like what makes a magic missile compared to a fireball, which follows a straight line, compared to when you pick up something like a spear and throw it, they all follow sort of their own trajectories. That's a separate video on its own that I simply won't go into. But if you want to look at it, you can copy this GUID, and then you can go back to here and so I did a little experiment off camera. I've created a copy of the original Firebolt GUID, and this is basically done so we can actually see what's in all of these fields, but very, very briefly, we can see here the effect, the VFX that happens when it hits the ground, the impact when it hits the target, the trail, so that's the projectile in flight, the preview path, and we can control sort of the acceleration, speed, and so on and so forth. So all of this is in here, but I won't really be covering. Go watch my video on VFX if you want to know more about how to set up the visuals for it, and go watch my future video on trajectories when I get around to it. It's a little bit more complicated. It involves maths and curves and Bezier curves and whatnot. So that one is still coming at some future point. But for now, I think we've covered the basics of the mechanics of a projectile spell, and all that's left to do is say have fun modding.